Welcome, everyone. My name is Sandra Bichel, and exactly this is Rickard Larsson. Thank you very much for joining us in our second of three webinar and live sessions that is streamed on LinkedIn and YouTube called Engagement for Retention and Performance. I'll allow Rickard to introduce himself first. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I'm a professor at Lund University in business administration for some of my time. I spend most of my time in Decision Dynamics, which is a provider of talent solutions based on more than 40 years of research and practice globally. And we provide such solutions as more engaging leadership, more engaging career development, recruitment, development, and so on. And we have published in Harvard Business Review and Academy Management and worked with many of the big companies the world over. Thank you. What about you, Sandra?
Thank you for asking. Well, Career Angel was founded in 2010. I'm very proud to say that we are a data-driven career consulting boutique. The topics we cover is everything around career management and job search, improving recruitment processes, employer branding. In the last 12 years, we have supported almost 9,000, and by the end of the year, we will have arrived at over 10,000 professionals on a one-to-one basis. And in the last 3 years, we've trained additionally to those 9,000, additionally 8,000 people in those mentioned areas. Now, before we get started with today's topic, I'd like to ask our professor today to summarize for those who haven't seen the recording or for those who haven't participated in the first webinar, to quickly summarize what the first webinar was about.
Well, we talked about how we can manage the perfect career storm of the Great Resignation. Whether or not we call it the Great Resignation, the digital transformation has been going on for many years. We are changing jobs more often. That has also been going on for many years, even though the pandemic is hopefully now disappearing more or less. But what we have learned from the pandemic is going to stay. And unfortunately, there will be more pandemics or other crises as we are living through right now. So we simply have to get used to that there will be higher personnel turnover. It becomes more of a problem. And I think one of the most important and appreciated slides of the first webinar was this talent replacement costs. How costly is it that people are leaving their jobs? And if we only look at the visible costs, then there are some recruitment costs for the replacement and some training costs for the replacement. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Actually, we lose engagement, we lose performance much earlier than that. And it's this reduced engagement that if it continues, I might start thinking, should I quit? And then if it continues to get worse, then I decide that I will quit. But you often do not hand in your resignation, or you have to talk to people like family and friends and look for future opportunities before you officially resign. And once you have resigned, then you typically exit before there is a replacement to replace you. So there is operational losses that begin or continue rather. And then when there is a replacement in place, then that replacement needs to be trained to come up to the same speed. And how many months are lost in this way? And we asked 51 municipal CEOs, CFOs, and CHROs what their guess was, and they guessed between 2 and 18 months, which on average is 7.4 months, and that's hopelessly low. When you count on the engagement part of this, we are talking about 1 to 3 years of salaries, which is more than twice as much as they expected. And that's when you assume that the person that you rehire actually do come up to the same level. Often they don't. 30% of recruitments fail, so they never come up. And so the more realistic estimate is actually 1.5 to 4 year annual salaries. And we need to be serious about. We can't just sweep it under the rug anymore. We can't be blind to all these costs, and therefore today's topic will be about engagement. Engagement is basically where we ended the last time, and now look at how engagement can be valuable for individuals and organizations. Because if organizations provide engaging rewards and career development to people, the individuals get more healthy, more happy, more satisfied, more energetic, more learning, and the list goes on. And they also perform better. And when they perform better, then the employer get more customer satisfaction and loyalty, more quality, more cooperation, more innovation, more efficiency, more results, more attractiveness, less absenteeism, and lo and behold, less personnel turnover. And the list goes on here too. And if anyone is interested in the research supporting this, we have written a LinkedIn article that we can share with you. But basically, we haven't found a single factor that has so many positive effects and so many for individuals and so many positive effects for organizations as engagement. And here are some of those studies that support that. And there is no studies saying that there will be more negative effects or less positive. It's a question of how positive and how many effects do you find, both if it's a practical study or if it's an academic study. And that includes personnel turnover. Clearly, it's being reduced by engagement, no matter who studies it. So how is the engagement so valuable? What is the source of value here? Some would even say that the engagement is just a new label on an old wine, but it isn't. It includes individually motivating rewards that you get, but it is also about the competent contributions that you make to the organization. It is a both and concept. It's both organization and individual. It's both giving and getting. It's both competence and motivation. This is what really.
I think that's very important to stress, that it's both sides, not just one side expecting something from the other.
Yeah, and when you combine these, the magic begins, because if you have neither, then you obviously are in a situation of low engagement. You can be over here when you are satisfied and you're likely to stay for what you get, even though you don't perform so much. And then you have the opposite, where those that perform more but don't think that they're getting so much, so they are an exit risk. And then you have the best of both worlds, the high engagement corner, where you also get a lot from what you give. That's value co-creation. And what makes this slide so important, I think, is that compare those that are satisfied low performers that are staying because of what they get from the organization. The high engagement people in the upper right-hand corner, they stay for what they are allowed to give. And that's the power of the diagonal, why the diagonal creates much more value than just the x-axis. And that's a very important insight. Then if it's so valuable, how many are engaged in their jobs? Well, there are some terrible numbers provided by Gallup. They have done a couple of global studies where they wind up with somewhere between 3 and 39 percent engaged. And I,
Usually when I ask participants during workshops for them to estimate what they think how engaged people are in their careers, usually the numbers are between 5 and 20%.
yeah, and guess what? Their number for Sweden is 14%. The number for Portugal, where you are, is 16%. The number for Poland, for instance, is 14%, just like Sweden. And the highest in Western Europe is Norway with 17%. Well,
Embarrassing, I'd say.
and France and Spain has as low as 6%. So it's a very common pattern. Even we can discuss the exact percentages. The point why Gallup is so much used is that engagement seems to be harder than it should be. There is something stopping us, and let me show you one of these stops. We can call it the crossroads towards greater performance. You can improve performance by either demanding more work and cutting costs, or you can increase engagement. Let's start with the left one. If you cut costs, then of course profit will increase automatically. But this is not sustainable, because when you demand more with less resources, the gap decreases engagement. And with less engagement, there is worse health. There is more accidents. There is more personnel turnover. There is less attractive employers. There is less committed efforts. There is worse performance over time. And what happens with worse performance? You demand more work and more cost cuts. So you have a vicious circle going that way. On the other hand, yes, more engagement, you have to make some investments to increase engagement, but they are fairly small and they result in better health and in fewer accidents, in less expensive turnover, in more attractive employers, in more committed efforts that produce greater sustainable performance. And guess what that does? It increases engagement. So it shouldn't be so damn hard, should it? But
no, it shouldn't.
Where do 95% of our organizations go? To the left.
Yeah.
Why do they do that? Well,
I can actually tell you short-term, quick wins and making shareholders happy.
And
we have a great question, Rickard, from Mustafa. Let me show that to everybody. He says the engagement data is from 2017. What ways do you think has COVID affected engagement?
Well,
we talked a little bit during the first webinar, but please do comment.
There is actually a recent article last year from Gallup also that talked about the pandemic paradox. Their engagement values actually went up. This was mainly US data. So they actually found more engagement by not having to commute as much to work when they was working more from home. On the other hand, their well-being went down because they were more worried. And of course, people were more sick. So normally health and engagement goes hand in hand. They support one another. But in 2020, the pandemic tore them apart. So engagement in one way went up, but well-being went down, and that increased burnout. So we can talk more about that in the next webinar. I don't have any slides for this pandemic paradox, but it's related. So
well, one thing we mentioned last time during the first webinar was how the Great Resignation often is also called the Great Upgrade, for people looking for more engaging work. So long-term effects of COVID could actually be for people to allow themselves to find more engaging workplaces.
Yes.
We
That's
actually have one more good question, if I can show you.
sure.
Peter is asking, thank you, Mustafa, for your great question. Do you have data showing the return on investment for increasing engagement versus short term?
Hmm. Well, I mean, those slides that I showed previously there is a lot of percentages there, and we'll be happy to share with you that LinkedIn article that's called Co-Creating Valuable Engagement, where you can see all the references, you can see all the numbers for a longer time. So
At the end of the webinar, we will share a link where you can request the recording and the
yeah.
materials, and also, let's call it, additional resources. And I'm happy to share that with you, Peter.
Yeah.
So at the end, watch out for the link at the very end to register for
Super.
resources.
And at the same time, I actually have to apologize here, because that 95% goes in the wrong direction is because of me. And that's because I'm a professor in business administration, and the supposedly core part of business administration is accounting. And unfortunately, accounting doesn't understand engagement at all. There is no engagement accounts. So you don't see these things. You don't see the big part of the iceberg. You don't see these costs because they don't show up in regular accounting, which is terrible. And we need to do this better.
We have one more question from Marco. How do you maintain engagement in fully remote positions? Is going to the office still relevant? And I think this would be a great question to ask to answer during Q&A, if that's okay with you, Marco. So if you could bear with us another 15 minutes, then we'll answer that question. I think part of the answer will come in the coming slides.
Yeah. And before we get next question, I think you should continue with these slides, Sandra.
Happy to comment on these. So one thing, as I've mentioned at the very beginning when I introduced myself, Career Angels has supported almost 9,000 individuals in the last years when it comes to their career management and job search. And one of the things, having been in executive search myself before becoming a career consultant, one thing that surprised me once I was allowed to have more transparent and closer conversations with my former candidates is to realize how many professionals, irrespective of where they are in a hierarchy or how long they've been active on the job market, be 2 years, 5 years, 15 years, 32 years, most of us don't know themselves when it comes to what's their most engaging career motives. They don't know what resonates the most with them, which then also means if you don't know yourself, how can we then take greater responsibility for our own engagement? So very often when somebody comes to us and says, okay, I want to change my job, the first question is why? Maybe just changing a job won't fix the problem. So maybe let's dig a little bit deeper if the question, if the situation allows for it, and let's see what's actually behind feeling frustrated, burnout, etc. And then, so if on the one hand we know that most people on the market, either employees or active candidates, don't know themselves, how can we then expect from our bosses to know about ourselves? Well, we don't know ourselves, and then say, please engage me. So I think this is a very, very important aspect of this engagement puzzle, to also be fair to ourselves and to our bosses to say, or to, well, not say, you are responsible for my engagement. So what we want to achieve is to have that better conversations about our careers in those annual I'm missing the word now, the annual development and reward dialogues, yes. The annual performance reviews, that was the word I was missing. In the annual performance reviews. And it does take a very mature organization to say, dear employee, please tell me the truth. A couple of years ago, we were engaged by one of the biggest media groups in CE because the HR department had realized that in their system, every single year, every person that was expected to want a promotion would say in their annual performance review system, what do you expect next year? Oh, I want a promotion. And I said, well, we've realized that very often we get those answers without them being real answers, but we want them to tell us maybe they don't want to be a manager anymore. Maybe they want to move from manager to consulting to project management. We recognize that not everybody wants to be promoted, and some people realize they don't want to be managers anymore. And we want to give our employees permission to tell us the truth, because as a mature organization, they had realized that it makes much more business sense to allow people to move within an organization rather than to have them leave, as we saw before. The exits, once somebody exits, you need to hire somebody, and that simply costs too much. So yeah, it takes a very mature organization to say, let's have transparent, open conversations. Let's allow people to get to know to themselves. See, I get all excited about that.
Yeah. you you have to move on.
Exactly. So, of course, what you want to do, and it does say so on the slide, think how much simpler it would be if everybody could discover what their most engaging career motives are. Then everybody can take their own responsibility for engagement, which then also takes off the pressure from the bosses to expect, please engage me. So, as Rickard said, it's one of the hardest things to achieve, but it shouldn't be that hard.
Mm. Exactly. A way of making it easier is to improve our both self-awareness and awareness of others' career orientation with Decision Dynamics career model. It's a model where sort of organizations and individuals meet, and where they exchange motivating rewards and competent contributions. And to do that well, you need to match career orientations with the person's motives, as well as the organization's culture and jobs and teams and leadership. So I presented this model in the previous one in one way. I'm going to present it in a somewhat different way here, but it has the same four major components, four different career orientation experts that are specializing to become as good as possible for as long as possible, that identify with their professional choice. They are an engineer, or they are carpenters, or something like that. Then the linear make their career by climbing higher on the leadership ladder, so to speak, towards greater positions of more responsibility and mandates. So these are the two traditional ways of looking at careers, but you can also have discover your career, and this spiral career is something that is more like my own, for instance, and many others that are rather finding that I'm trying to do what people expect of me. And that works for a number of years, but then motivation goes down, and I'm wondering, what am I doing and who am I? And then you find some new way of making use of your experience in a broader setting, and you go, okay, I was a little bit wrong, but now I'm on the right path. But then after 5 years, motivation go down again, and you try to look for what's missing, and you find it again, and you go, what if I do this for 5 years, and then something else for 5 years, and then something else again for 5 years? Wouldn't that be a great career? But it can take 20 years to discover that you should change every 5 years, because that's not what we teach at the universities. There you're going to get one as education for the rest of your life, and that's very expert oriented. So you have the spiral one, and finally you have transitory that changes as often as possible, do as different things as possible, so they don't even think that they have a career, even though this is something that's becoming more and more prevalent in this more and more dynamic world of free agents and so on. So these are the four different career orientations. They have different engagement drivers and killers. What's really engaging expert is refining quality and having in-depth knowledge. They hate to have disruptive changes and incompetence. On the other hand, linears, they love competitive performance and improving efficiency. They hate lack of clear goals and indecision. On the other hand, spiral, they love creative teamwork and people development. They hate instead destructive conflicts and narrow-mindedness. Like to see the broader picture. Finally, transitory, they love job rotation and freedom from supervision. They do not like strict rules and stable routines. So very different engagement drivers and killers, and that is an important understanding to increase, because you increase engagement by more drivers and less killers. And you can then answer 38 questions when you do your career profile, and you get you're not put in one box. You get a profile where the higher the blue bar, the more ideal you think that career orientation is. So Sandra is mainly linear
Not
spiral,
me.
like
Not
you.
me.
Not exactly.
Not me.
We have to change that next time.
I think so.
This is Sandra Sample, not Sandra Bishop. Apologize for that. Again, sometimes I'm a slow learner. But they also have the underlying motives that follow that. But Sandra Sample is 1 in 100 that has so close correspondence between the blue career orientation in her head and the underlying career motives in her heart, metaphorically. A more normal profile is someone like Joe, who dreams as much as Sandra to get promoted. He also have a linear ideal followed by a spiral. But his heart is saying, no, not such a good idea. Because what's really motivating to Joe is, for instance, specializing in an area of a specific molecule or something. Well, have you had time to do that since you became a manager? No, I've just been administrating people. So why did you idealize the linear career? Oops, I'm probably making a career on other people's terms. So luckily we have more red bars being higher than the blue bars. That's called motivation potential. So now Joe can discover that. And unfortunately, 60% of us, that this is the scientific proof again that we also can provide for those that want, is that we have a blue bar that points in one direction that is not corresponding to the highest red bar, which is pointing in another direction. And in Sweden, it's mainly pointing to spiral, and we can talk about other countries at some point. But anyway, that's it's very common with the U.S. linear misdirections, because 50% of the U.S. public has an ideal to climbing upwards, while only 10% can actually become managers. So that's a national tragedy in that sense. So what can you then do to co-create more engagement? Well, learning about your own drivers and killers with the career model allows you to take greater responsibility for your own engagement, and you can actually take some relief and give some energy to your managers and your coworkers. And then you can communicate your drivers and killers with greater precision to your managers, so they can become more engaging leaders, and coworkers who can then engage in more engaging teamwork. And you can also divide the work up so you get more of your drivers and less of your killers, because you don't have different. So you can switch and make double winners out of people. And for those that like more change than this, you can rotate jobs. You can also move between different parts of your organization if it's sufficiently big. So these are many ways how you can improve your engagement where you are currently employed. You don't have to jump to new. As we said in the last, it's better to change your jobs right than changing your jobs more often.
Exactly.
So that was my presentation, actually our presentation. So let's
Well, yours.
discuss some more interactive issues here.
Well, one question we anticipated that would come from the audience is around international differences.
Yeah.
So maybe, Rickard, you can comment a little bit more around those international differences when it comes to the career model.
Yeah, I sort of cheated and talked about Sweden and the US, but we have a lot of international data, and it corresponds very nicely with Gerd Hofstede's cultural dimensions, where he measured uncertainty avoidance, which is something that comes. Experts don't want uncertainty, and that is particularly high in Germany. Long-term orientation is also, and I'm not sure why that moved over, but anyway, something that is more towards China and Japan, which then also have more expert statistics in that sense. Looking at linear, power distance was another Hofstede variant that is very high, for instance, in France, the distance between the superior and the subordinate. And there is also individualism, where US is the highest in the world, and that also drives for greater competition in that sense. And then we have the femininity dimension that especially Scandinavia, Sweden, not only Sweden, but also Finland and Holland and Norway have high scores on the femininity dimension, as well as high scores on spiral. We don't have any country that has a high correlation with trans story, but that's more because those that have high correlation with trans story tend to be more immigrants. They have the easiest time of moving between countries, not staying in the same country. So that's some data on the international issues. But it's important to note that these are the blue bars that are in our heads. We are being societally fooled to believe that all Swedes should go sideways, or all Americans should climb upwards, or all Germans should specialize and become double doctors or something like that.
And I'd add to that one thing, because culture is also created through universities. So very often MBA students, executive MBA students, global executive MBA students are
very
I
lame.
almost want to say brainwashed into saying out loud, linear is the only way to go in your career. Whereas their heart could actually discover, well, actually, I want to go sideways or start my own business. So it's important. One is the country context, but also the context of those closest to us. Let's maybe put it that way.
And I mean, the societal. I have a saying that said, "Don't let our collective heads fool your heart." That's unfortunately what all societies do when they socialize people into believing that one of these career paths are more ideal than the others. That then you are pursuing what you think you should or ought to do. But that's societal monkeys sitting on your shoulder telling you this way is best, not asking your heart, unfortunately. So anyway, let's go on.
The other question that we thought you might ask is, how can one increased performance with the career model. And I think that's a good moment to also have a look at Marco's question. I'll show it again. How do you
Mm.
maintain engagement in fully remote positions? Is going to the office still relevant? I have the feeling that this is a question that we can combine.
Well, I mean, what we are learning in this pandemic issue is that we have been fooled that everybody should go to the office all the time by the institutions, by the norms, and the pandemic actually brought that down. Now we realize that it can actually be, to some extent, more effective, that some more or less work in both places. There will be much more hybrid solutions, and with hybrid solutions, there will be more diversity. And let me show you how diversity increases performance then. Because if you start thinking of these career orientations as 4 employee segments, then you engage the expert segment with stable, secure refinement. You engage the linear with more competitive, efficient leadership. You engage the spirals with more creative, cross-functional teamwork. And you engage transitories with more self-managed, varied, mobile networking. And if you are able to engage all these 4 segments of career orientations, you will get the best of their respective talents. An engaged expert will provide high quality long-term commitment. Engaged linears will provide a drive towards high performance and growth. Engaged spirals will provide innovative, cooperative skill diversity, more generalists, so to speak. And engaged transitories will provide more high-speed, flexible customer adaptation. And you actually need all of them. But unfortunately, normal managers only engage one of these segments. Good managers engage 2 of these segments. Bad managers don't engage any of these segments. But engaging leadership based on the career model should try to engage 3 or even 4 of these segments to get all these goodies. And they collaborate greatly, for instance, in growth, because transitories discovers new opportunities wherever they happen to be. And spirals make some creative development of those opportunities into the organization to make use of what we already have. And linears can drive competitive growth based on that development. And then experts can do the long-term harvesting. So growth is really a relay of different stretches, so to speak, different parts. And you need different talents and different motives to run those stretches best. And no one can really do it well, all of those stretches, as a singular person. So we can help one another this way. So you can increase growth, you can increase performance by considering all 4 career orientations. Then you can get diversity into performance.
Mhm. I'll add.
Okay, sorry, I was still.
I would add here one more thing to also comment on the remote versus office aspect, because as you said, bad managers, good managers, leaders, it's already, uh, it takes awareness from leaders, from organizations, to intentionally address 3 or all 4 of those segments.
Yeah.
Now, in a remote world, it takes even more of an effort because you have to be even more intentional to listen to employees, to talk to them, to create space, to observe, to find out who they are. Of course, you can have everybody take a test, um, but in one-on-one, in group settings, it's in this remote setting, it takes much more of an effort from a manager, leader, even a peer, to figure out who is in what segment and what I can do as a peer, a manager, to engage with my coworkers. I would, for example, Career Angels, we have been remote since 2013. I say
Mhm.
before it was a thing.
Yeah.
Um, so we've been a remote organization since 2013, and we've managed to have this fantastic, high quality, loyal team And I'd say we are definitely most engaged organizations that I know, with people that have never met each other in their entire life, especially those who joined in the last 2 years. So it's possible, but it takes more effort and much more awareness.
Mm.
I hope that
And,
answers your question, Marco.
and it's also managers that are more linear than typically the other orientations. They tend to project their own values. So things like promotion and monetary bonuses and stuff like that is overestimated by linear managers when they project that onto the others, and you can make a lot more projections if you don't meet people and try things out. This is a valuable help for both managing people that you face directly and those that you screen with. Knowing this, you will engage more, basically.
I just remember the conversation I had once with an HR director Europe with local HR manager, and we were talking about actually the theory and what we're sharing now. And the ladies were discussing, they were translating the theory into their own organization, and then there was this aha moment, and we talk awareness, and one lady said to another, now I understand, that's why you don't want to promote people to give them on like promote people on their business cards from expert to senior experts, because it's not important to you, but it's important to them.
Mm.
And if we manage people through our own career spectacles and expectations, that's exactly that point, to actually look from their perspective. What do they need to, fully engage them and get all these things we need from a business perspective? We have a couple, I know we have one more pre-prepared answer, but let's do that, Rickard, if you agree. Let's skip ahead to next steps. And then we have some really great questions still lined up. How does that sound?
Okay, we can jump off that. One way of actually getting these goodies is that you can be certified into using the career model. It's very useful for even attracting, selecting, developing, appraising, retaining, and even exiting talents. And we will be talking more about this in the next webinar. But both managers and HR people can be certified, as well as consultants and coaches can be certified in it. We offer convenient and time-efficient online certification training. Next round will probably start in May or June. And you can contact me via LinkedIn or email and get more information, or you can look up on our website, decisiondynamics.com, for more information about this. But this is a clear step on making use of this knowledge creating tool. Oops, that was one.
No, that was me.
Where was you? Okay.
That was me. I clicked ahead.
Yeah.
And our third webinar of this 3-webinar series will be held on May 25, Make Talent Love, Not War. We chose that title early February. And here we'll talk about, because one of the questions somebody could ask is, well, why don't we just recruit more engaged candidates right away? We saw the quadrants. Why not go for those high engaged right away? Wouldn't that be the solution? So during Make Talent Love Not War, we'll talk about how to think about recruiting, promoting from an organizational perspective. And now I think there are a couple of very good, wait, actually I thought there's one more that I mentioned early on. If you want to have access to the materials, the recordings, etc., to be full in line with GDPR, fill in this form, careerangels.eu/series of webinars. It's also on the event link, where you can, under the event link or under the event on LinkedIn, you can also find that link. And if you want to discuss this material in your own context, career path, etc. You can also book, of course, a free career consultation with Career Angels through the links here that I'll right afterwards also post in the comment section. But I'm really excited about the questions. So I'll switch off the presentation and I'll show the questions. And I think I like to start with Aurelie's question. We talk about ways to engage those 4 different profiles. So I assume it should be done locally between line managers and employees, but then what can be done on an organizational level? Is it okay if I take the first part of the question?
Sure, go.
If you have the line manager and the employee, the line manager needs tools from the organization, rewards, job rotation, etc. And everybody, expert, linear, spiral, transitory, has different expectations as to rewards, as to appraisal. So at an organization level, it does make sense to make sure that the line managers have the necessary tools, and which also includes having the necessary know-how.
And I like to add to that that we even have a questionnaire that asks questions about the organization. That is, what kind of strategy, structure, appraisal, and rewards are being offered, and the individuals can then answer those questions to get their individual culture view, and then you can aggregate it to see what is the shared culture view, and that it's really through the fit between your career motives and the culture that you're in that engagement occurs, or actually disengagement occurs. So we'll talk a bit more about these organizational issues in the next webinar. But you're right. It should not only be a personal or interpersonal one. It should also be an organizational one. Together, can all these 3 perspectives create the most engagement?
Mm-hmm. I have one other good question here. Wouldn't it be simpler to just pay people better to retain and engage them?
Well,
I think you had partially already replied to that.
But I can't. I mean, this is one of the reasons we called make talent love and not war. Is that if you think you can buy real engagement, then that it really doesn't work so in that way. Money does make it simpler, because everybody likes more money. But what really engages people, what really makes them love their work, love Monday mornings and so on, is not the monetary stuff. It is the content of the work, the development over time, the colleagues or whatever. We have very different engagement drivers, and it's the engagement drivers that are not primarily monetary. So that's why we're going to talk more about love in relation to engagement next time, and not so much about money. It will save you money. It's cheaper to not pay so much, so high monetary rewards.
And with those engagement drivers and killers, a couple of years when I learned this about the career model and the whole know-how that's behind it, coincidentally, more or less at the same time, one of the best assistants I've ever had. I wanted to make sure to retain her in our organization. I wanted her to want to stay and have a commitment for her to stay for another year or 2, so we could do certain medium to long-term projects. Now, thinking from my then rather expert linear perspective, I said, listen, let's make a deal. I'll pay for your, Career Angels will pay for your postgraduate degree in exchange for your loyalty. And fortunately enough, we had a very good relationship and open communication. And she said, listen, if you do that, I'll leave. This would freak me out because she was looking from her very transitory freedom needing perspective. And it took me some time to realize what was going on and connect it then to the theory. So it's important to really map out the team, the organization, understand what engages people. And here, for example, in this case, I saved myself, or I saved the organization paying for somebody's postgraduate degree, because that was not what they wanted or expected. They wanted something completely different, and in the area of professional development.
Yeah.
We have
Silver
one.
seat belts doesn't work so well with transitory. You keep
Exactly.
transitories by setting them free, and if you can set them free in your own context, then they can stay surprisingly long.
And I think this could be the last question, because we've gone over time and we want everybody to have the lunch break. A LinkedIn user has posted, do you have any forecasts on organization adopting new business models such as hybrid versus people deciding to leave the business?
Well, I mean, the forecast is that people will leave more often than they did in the past. That's not going to change a lot. There will, of course, be some business cycle variations. But when we realize that we can get more engagement at less office cost, then we're going to find that. But we can't just, everybody will not be able to work at home. There will be hybrids open up for more variation open up for more engagement. So there is a positive spiral there. Together that makes it more and more difficult to predict exactly, because you could predict when people were more locked into there's only one way of having a career, there's only one place to work, and so on. We might even have multiple jobs more often than we're having because of these diversity. So there isn't one single prediction or one single model. It's going to be a diversity meets diversity, and they fall in love with more engagement unless we try to stop it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Rickard, I think that was a good last answer. If again anybody has more answers, please do reach out to us through LinkedIn or our emails. Happy to share the material and also additional source material that we've promised in the meantime. Just fill out the form so we are allowed to send it to you. I again would like to invite you once again to our webinar in May. Let me just put it up one more time. It's May 25th, same time. Make talent love, not war. Thank you very much to everyone for sharing your lunch breaks with us, and hope to see you again on May 25. Have a lovely rest of the day and week.
And
Goodbye.
spring. Bye bye.